Bobby interviewed scene 2, take 2.
So we're the Bozeman Pond. I spend a lot of time here. I play lacrosse here with my roommate. I come here and just walk around the pond sometimes, look for dogs. There's a lot of dogs here. It's gorgeous here.
My daughter and I are both pretty creative, so we do things, make jewelry, draw things, share our art with each other. And camping too. We love camping together.
I've got a bit of an overactive imagination. I would actually love to be an art director for film. I've always enjoyed seeing films, animated films, films with CG, video games and such.
Well, I started doing wildlife photography seriously during the spring and summer of 2017. It's a worthwhile kind of spiritual experience for me just to be out there. I'm contemplating, I'm meditating in a way, in that the photographs themselves are sort of the fruits of that meditation, and it's a way of me connecting spiritually to creation. And in my view, creation is where God is, and so that's how I connect spiritually, with God and with wilderness and wildlife.
I am a mechanical design engineer. I've been working in the motorsports industry probably since 1989. Basically, I design components and stuff for all kinds of motorsports applications, and mostly to do with fuel control and testing. My dad was a mechanic, my uncle was a mechanic, and so I grew up around cars and motorcycles and fixing and building, and I was always just out there with them, looking at what they were doing and being fascinated by it, and I grew up to have a talent for it.
Professionally, I think I consider myself a multimedia artist. Because right now, my next job is actually going to be a lighting artist for CGI. So I guess the main thing is basically, I folded and sculpted this, and what I basically do is the same thing. I'll grab any simple form of geometry and just give it the folds and cuts that it needs until it becomes the 3D model that I need. Once that's set, I'll basically unfold it, paint over it, and then rebuild it so that when you see it on screen, it looks exactly as it should.
I will be graduating this December. I'm going back to Portland and gonna try to pursue some kind of photography career there if I can. I really like shooting photos of people. People are so interesting, and I've done a few projects regarding people. People experience their own clothing and their own expression of gender and even just like themselves in different ways, and I'm super, super intrigued by that.
I'm an attorney for Disability Rights Montana, so I do litigation, but I also supervise advocates in our agency who do information and referral for people who call. The work itself is pretty gratifying, working with people who experience disability, who just need a boost, really, and I really enjoy the people that I work with. It's a very close-knit group of people, about 15, 16 employees, and we all get along and support each other like family, so I'm very happy there.
I love what I do. I don't think I would have stayed this long if I didn't. My dad, having been a mechanic all his life, worked with engineers and thought that would be a wonderful thing for one of his children to be, so he always pushed me towards it. Honestly, though, even though I had a talent for it and I kind of just fell into it, it might not have been my first choice had I not, at the time, been trying so desperately to live up to everyone's expectations to me as a boy. My passion might have more rightly fell somewhere in medicine.
When I was a little kid, I was a bit of an odd child. For the longest time, I didn't really see the difference between being a boy or a girl. I just thought, oh, everyone's fun. Everyone can do what they want. Everyone should be nice to each other. When I was younger, I wanted to do gymnastics, but I never had the opportunity to, and my parents were not very okay with it.
I was pretty outgoing and kind of like ridiculously energetic for a while. I knew that there was something different about me and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I would like ask my mom like, hey, can I wear these pants like a boy, or can I like cut my hair short like a boy? And she really didn't know what to do about that. So she would always be like, no, like you're a girl, like you shouldn't do that.
Growing up as, as a small child, I always had this dichotomy, inside of me of the, are you a woman, are you a girl, are you a boy, and not knowing the answer to that. In fact, I may have sort of overcompensated and, did all of the things that little boys were, supposed to do, because inside, I had lots of confusion about gender and who I was. And I was afraid that this female part of me was going to show through and people would know that, wait a sec, you're not really a little boy. You've got some girl in you.
I can say, as far as my fears going into transition, they were huge. I was utterly certain I would lose my entire family and probably my children. I was sure I would lose my job. I was sure I'd lose most, if not all, of my friends, and I'd just be starting over again from square one.
My mom's first reaction was, well, time to get you some testosterone, which is not the best response you can get from a parent, usually, especially when they tell you for so long that we're always here for you, we'll always support you, and no matter what you choose, we'll always be here for you. And just seeing that kind of collapse was not a fun feeling. But with time, things gradually started to get better.
So when I came out to my mom, she really didn't know what to say. And I think it took her a few days to get used to it. Like, she actually didn't really talk to me for a few days. Finally, she sort of said like, well, I still love you no matter what, and gave me like an awkward side hug.
When I began to transition, that moment began with my wife at the time coming home from work and discovering me, catching me really, although not seeing me, directly dressed and drunk. And, there were boxes of accoutrement out on the bed. This was a moment I called a crash, because my history of all that had been an internal thing for 48 years was suddenly crashing with the outside world, reality, another human being. And that was the first person I ever came out and said, I'm transgender.
I did a mass email. I thought, this is it. This is where I start my whole life over again, and from zero. And as replies came in, as I had interactions with people in my life, I found that most of it wasn't as bad as I expected. I say most because some of it was, and a couple times I was surprised that it was worse than I expected. And that's only my personal experience. I've known people that have lost a lot more than me, and I've known some people that came out of it even better than me.
On several occasions, my dad would actually come to Bozeman, and my mom would actually give me a call, like, hey, your dad's going to be there. He might come pick you up so that you guys can have lunch. And I'd be sitting by the door waiting all day until my mom calls me, like, hey, how was lunch with your dad? And it's like, he never showed up. And just those things frequently happening, or like family reunions and stuff like that where I wasn't invited. Those kind of things are really hard for me, especially I didn't have any friends. I didn't really have anyone to approach. And so just knowing that your family treats you that way as well just makes it heartbreaking.
I'm very happy with the results of my surgery. I woke up the second day and my best friend was there, and they're like, hey, how are you feeling? And I was like, I didn't think this would hurt. And they're like, you're stupid. Why didn't you think this would hurt? I've known them since 5th grade. And so they were there through every different stage of it. So they've been hugely, hugely supportive of me, and we're still really close. And I don't know where I'd be without them, honestly.
My spouse at the time, Peggy, was incredible. She was so selfless in that moment where she could have gotten angry and thrown me out of the house or any of a number of things. But what she did, as I cried, was hold me, and she got it right from the beginning, even though it sort of spelled the end of our marriage. Because as she likes to say, she's not a lesbian and not an alcoholic. But we have remained good friends ever since.
I guess some of the dumbest things people ask me is, what was the most painful part? Because to me it should be really obvious that the most painful part is losing people.
I think I understand why a parent would want to grieve for a child they had, but in the end it is still the same child.
Honestly, the more supportive you are, the closer they'll be to you, the more they'll be willing to open up to you. And it might be hard for you, but it's harder for them. It's understandable that you just lost someone, because honestly, it's something to grieve about and something to be sad about, because you had a daughter or you had a son and they're just not there anymore. They're something completely different. But don't think about it as them dying or ceasing to exist.
My kids, particularly my daughter, had a very difficult time and told me that they thought of me as dead. I've never had a child die, thank God, but I imagine that it's very similar. It feels like a death. How do you let go of your children? How do you let go of somebody that you love so much and have every day of their life, and you feel like are so much a part of you? It's really like trying to cut out a part of who you are. And so I had to come to some kind of settlement, really, in my own mind and heart about that, to where the door is always open for my children, but they're really not part of my life right now and have never known me as Bobby, as sober, and as a woman. You can never predict how another person, no matter how well you think you know them, is going to respond to those big and dramatic lifestyle changes. So it's so important to be patient and tolerant and understanding that it's not just about me.
I don't really mind educating people about transitioning or trans people. The only issue is when they try to make it seem like they're the victims. I think one of the bigger questions is, so you were gay before you transitioned? The stupidest thing I've had someone ask me is like, so how big's your penis? I've even had people ask me if my breasts were real, and they are, but it's not nice to have people ask you.
I think they're fixated on physical things. And that's the other thing. I mean, they say, well, did you hate your penis? And I'm like, well, it was actually a pretty nice one, but it belonged somewhere else. People somehow feel entitled to know everything about your gender and your sex and what you're up for and what you got going on.
People like to ask like what my name used to be or things that like about like me in the past. I get a lot of maybe not dumb questions but uninformed questions about what testosterone does. So like, oh, like, so do you have to do it? Do you have to do shots forever, or do you produce it now? Like, do you have sperm now? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I wish people would ask more like deeper questions about my transition. Just because I like talking about how I feel now, like more emotion-wise than physical. Like, how are you feeling? Like, are you feeling happier with yourself? Stuff like that.
People don't readily think of gender transition as anything but a physical thing. And what, even for people who are going through it, they're so focused on the physical part of gender transition, rather than understanding that there's a transformation in body, mind, and spirit.
My gender has always been the same. Through my transformation, a lot of things changed about me, but my gender is the part that stayed the same. My gender is the part that required me to make the other changes. So whenever somebody doesn't, respect my pronouns or, call me by my preferred name, actually my real name, it's just pretty clear that they don't care about me or my feelings and don't really want to be a part of my life. So I I respect that, and I cut them out. It is kind of an interesting process. It's a deeply personal process when you get to choose your own name. The name I'm using now is just a feminized version of the name I was given, and that way I could keep my monogram towels.
When I first began my gender transition, people would use the male pronouns like he and him, and I carried around the bag of kisses, and I, give them a little kiss every time they said he or him. And, they'd give me this quizzical look like, what's that all about? And I would simply respond, her, she.
It's honestly very complicated. I mean, I don't like to complain, but let's be honest. I'm trans, I'm a woman of color, and I'm an immigrant. I think those are three very hated things here. In Mexico, sadly, it's basically a country run by drug lords. So the fact is that over there, even just walking down the street, if one of them approach you, wanting to like hook up or whatever, you can't say no. Things go very poorly for you. And the thing is that if you tell them, hey, I have a penis, you're going to die either in that moment or soon. Honestly, being in Mexico is just one of the most terrifying things for someone like me.
Oh, there's a lot of things that trans people have to consider regarding their own safety that cisgender people don't necessarily have to think about. And for male to female, it's actually a little more pronounced, because if you were socialized male, you don't always think about all the things that just a woman has to think about in regard to their safety until you're living it.
I do kind of a thing like, instead of bar hopping, I church hop. So, I go to different churches, sometimes 3 times on a Sunday. But I've called the ministers ahead of time, and I just say, hey, I'm transgender. Am I welcome in your community? And you can tell right away, because if there's any equivocation, you're not welcome. And there has been. But my experience for the most part has been that I'm invited in to be part of those communities. I mean, I've testified before the state legislature and had a Baptist pastor point to me and say that I'm an abomination and should be put to death. And, they don't realize that I'm also a real human being, and that kind of hurts.
There's actually kind of a set of questions that I'm always going to get in every class. I do find, though, that oftentimes I'm not getting as invasive of questions as I actually hope to get, because I want them to satisfy those questions on me and not on trans people out in the world. There are groups that, and typically they're religiously oriented, and they have strong feelings about who they should be able to discriminate against and who they shouldn't be able to. And whenever there are non-discrimination type laws that are brought forward, these people come out of the woodwork, and the first thing they go to is bathroom panic. People aren't educated enough about trans people. They don't understand us enough. And too often it's easy for them to see a trans woman as just a man in a dress. And the reality is that we've been in these bathrooms all along and nothing's happened. Because you want to see something happen, make us go into the wrong bathroom. Because if we do then something's going to happen, then people are going to notice. And the truth is that when you're a trans person just navigating everyday life, it is dangerous for you to be clocked or outed. Before I had any surgeries, if I had to spend any time in a changing room or a women's room, I was sure as hell not going to let anybody see what I had going on. And I can tell you, as a queer child in high school, I was assaulted in the bathroom, in the boys' room, by boys.
Well, thank God I'm not a politician, and I don't, because I'm sure my skeletons would be thrown in front of me. When I was younger, I was a card-carrying, conservative, Republican, queer basher from hell. And I was hiding by actively denying those things. So when I transitioned, I also got sober. So I was going through this sort of psychic upheaval anyways, in which I questioned all of my values. I think that many people go through their lives without self-reflection. And so they are forced into a moment where they are confronted with who they are and what their past is. And they will have to come to their own sense of reckoning about that.
I wish there could be more stories about just trans people existing, and maybe not even necessarily about them being trans or about their transition, but just like them existing as humans, because a lot of us just exist for most of our lives.
By all rights, many of us should be happier once we've been able to transition and get, to where we feel that we're comfortable in our own skin, where we feel congruent with our own body. That only answers one aspect of being a human, though. Then there's all these other people who are saying that you're not even real, and deciding that you're not worth interacting with anymore. And that can be really disheartening, because you're like, hey world, I'm here, and world's like, hey, forget you now. You're not playing by our rules anymore.
And I think that's definitely one of the bigger things. Having people's attitude completely change. It's like, hey, I'm trans. Oh, bye. I actually went to finish my studies in Vancouver. And honestly, things over there are quite amazing. And just the whole experience was different. I mean, it's not like, hey, you're a trans person. Like, no, you're a woman and that's it. No questions asked.
I find that not just my experience, but a lot of people who are transgender, have a difficult time with romance.
The pool of people that are available that are even willing to think about dating a trans person is so incredibly small, smaller than if you're cis hetero and smaller than if you're even gay.
For me, it's been kind of difficult, finding somebody who can sort of get their heads around having a partner who's gone through this gender transition.
Oh, and there's always that one person or that group of people that are obsessed with trans people in a fetish way. It's not fun. People they can be very selfish of other people or very objectifying. Grow up, people. Stay in school.
I started dating someone who was trans also when I was 16. And I don't think it really clicked immediately, but it was a really gradual sort of like burn on to like, oh, hang on, if she can do this too, then like maybe I can also, and that would be super awesome. I'm feeling a lot happier with myself. I'm feeling a lot more at peace, I think, with who I am as a person.
For the first time in my life, my emotional life is balanced. It feels right. I'm happy. I mean, genuinely happy.
Honestly, I think it's mainly getting to know who you are. But just like imagine waking up and looking into a mirror. How do you picture yourself? How do you see yourself? How can you picture yourself with a smile on your face?
I want people to see me and my humanity, and I want them to connect with that. I want them to see the similarities between us, not just the difference. Because the difference is actually, 4 ounces of flesh. That's all it really amounts to. And maybe, a few textiles.
Those who don't know skin, we basically have 3 layers. The top one, which is the main color, then we've got a sub-layer. That's basically like the lower levels of the skin and how dark it gets depending on how deep it is. And then you've got the blood and meat. So all of those colors kind of point towards the way your skin looks. And all of that plays an important part, and just how delicate it can be.
So recently was my third year in testosterone, and I threw a third birthday party for myself. My friends got me this Bowling Friends kit for 3-year-olds, and when they went up to the counter to get it wrapped, the cashier asked if it was okay if it had a bow on it, or if that would be too hard for the 3-year-old to open.
That's the experience that I've had, and it's older men, granted, you know. So maybe all you young men feel differently. So maybe I should date young men, who knows? And I don't think of myself as a cougar, more of a panther.